church is covered, and they're all wonderful. I don't know I'll be at all of them all at once, but I'm committed to being at all of them sometime. Happening was a wonderful event. Let me tell you, there were 80 of us. There were 30-some candidates, 35, 36 candidates. There were 40-some team members. And we spent the weekend at Camp Weed. Those of you who have done Cursillo will recognize the pattern. Singing, praying, listening to talks on the basics of the Christian faith, worshiping, and creating Christian community together. Maddie Dunkel, Kurt's daughter, was the rector. And the real difference, I'm going to tell you, for those of you who have done Cursillo but never have had the opportunity yet to do happening, the real difference is it's like playing a 33 1/3 record of Cursillo at 78. Now, that's... I was going to say, I've intentionally... chosen that image because nobody I was with last week would understand it. Just like I didn't understand half of what they were saying. They were probably sitting there talking about me, and I thought they were talking about how wonderful the Diocese of Florida is. But happening was, for me as well as for others who were part of it, a life-changing and faith-engendering weekend. If you have not done it, and I'm speaking to most of us in the hall now, there's a category of happeners, which is known, and here's another word they really don't understand, known as geritals. I was asking some of the kids last weekend, have you ever seen, what's geritol? I said, yeah, that and NyQuil. That was, you don't understand that either. But older people, people over the age of 18, 19, 20, come and experience this weekend together. And what you do, it occurred to me as I was there last weekend and at a worship service we had, I was able to say this, it's like going to a different world. It's like entering a place you've never been before where the language is different. The attitudes are slightly shifted, but I'm pleased to say it happening in this diocese where the teaching was all solid and substantial and meaty and gospel stuff. And these kids got it, and they related to it, and it was important to them. And I saw them laugh and saw them cry. I was crying with them. And I heard them sing, usually again with rhythms and with a bounce and with a style that this poor old guy could never replicate. But it was a joyful, Christ-filled event that no one diocese, no one parish put on, no one mission could run, but which we as a diocese did. This is diocesan ministry. This is why we come together. And it's in our ministry to these teenagers, in our ministry to young people, that we are going to change the life of this church. I'm insistent that every one of our clergy attend Cursillo. I'm insistent. I'm insistent that every delegate to this convention, that most of you raised your hand, almost all of you raised your hands a while ago. But those who didn't, take it to heart. Your life will be changed. You will learn something. You'll sing a song that you didn't know before. All week long, sometimes you all comment on how I tend to whistle after church services. When I'm whistling is always the last song I heard. And all week long, I've been whistling, I can't do it real well, the music that the music team from Happening last week was praying and playing at one particularly dramatic moment that may have occurred in the dark last Sunday morning. And the music was so upbeat and so lively, and there were lights flashing in the darkness, and I didn't know whether the lights were really going off or whether it was just a spiritual thing happening in my head. It was still early and I hadn't had coffee. But this is our ministry as a diocese. We're going to change the world. We're going to change the communities around us. We're going to change our congregations. We're going to change our families and the families of others by reaching their youth. By reaching their youth and teaching them the music and teaching them the language and teaching them who Jesus Christ can be for them. The same sort of things happening in our university. We had two great chaplaincies, one at Florida State. They call themselves Well, they did just beat Wake Forest this week on top of what University of North Carolina and Duke. So 3 wins against Big Four teams that I grew up with is significant. Pisgah Knolls, we have Pisgah Gators, and I understand they've had a few championships too. Both of these chaplaincies are strongly led by excellent chaplains. They're growing, they're busy. And here's another indicator for you and me of the hope and the challenge to us that these chaplaincies now at the colleges are lifting up young men and women who are interested in ordained ministry. You know, providing leadership for the future of the church is one of our chief concerns. And this is where it's starting. Right now at the University of the South, at Sewanee, in the School of Theology, we have one Pisgah Knoll and one Pisgah Gator studying. Products of our chaplaincies, the sorts of young men and women who are going to change the church. You know, last night in our church service, Jim Cooper preached about inspiration and education and action. Well, we're inspired to do something with these young people at Discovery, at Happening, in our universities. We're educating them. We're educating leaders for them. We're learning how to lift them up and how to draw them into the life of the church and into leadership in the church. And you and I, as a diocese, are called to do the acts, to do the things that need to be done, to continue to build them and bring them into our life together. And incidentally, let me just say, we have 2 great college chaplaincies, Pisgah Knolls and Pisgah Gators, and my thought is that within not too many months, perhaps a couple of years, we need to have a 3rd species in this diocese. And I'm suggesting that we call them Osprey-Palians. We've already, as a matter of fact, had a promise on some land at the University of North Florida to build a chapel, to build an Episcopal house, and hopefully, with a capital campaign that's going to be starting before long, in which I'll be back to talk to you about even more in depth in the future, you're going to have the opportunity to build that chapel. And then we can watch the damage that ensues when Pisgah Gators, Pisgah Knolls, and Osprey-Palians all get together. Probably on the floor of this convention in the not-too-distant future. Last night we dedicated our offering. We gave our offering at our opening Eucharist to support the work of St. Mary's Mission here in Jacksonville, Sue Carmichael's work there, and Amanda Nichols' work at Grace Mission in Tallahassee. Inspiration, education, action. Our church is meeting the streets there, and it's the diocese that's doing it. Those are diocesan missions. All of us in this hall are responsible for the mission and ministry of those two great worshiping communities. These are places where you don't just walk in and get handed some money to go back out on the street. You're brought in, you're loved. You're loved, you're fed, you're cared for, you sing, you dance, you worship. I remember being in Grace Mission a couple of years ago, and little children from the congregation came up as I was preaching my homily, and they were thrilled because I took off all these fancy silk things. Charles Kaiser can agree, we can identify this. I took off my mitre, I put it on the head of one of the little children. And I took off my chasuble and put it over the head of another child, and took off this cross and put it around the neck of yet another one, took off the Episcopal ring, the official seal of the diocese.